I lost my first employee. It was like a breakup. I felt like rejected. What's wrong with me? Yeah, I can change.
Welcome to Happy Millionaire, a show about how to make profit with a positive impact and stay happy along the way. On today's episode, we'll be covering the importance of prioritization, how to 10x the service I give my customers, and Rupy loses his first employee.
Yeah, the last one's pretty important. It's not easy, as you'll find out, but we all face it and we have to figure out how to handle it well.
And plus, we'll be sharing my top tips for setting and achieving goals in 2023. All right, what's going on in the business world?
Business-wise, let me give you an insight. So last week was tough. It was a very tough week for me. It was tough, not from the pressures on the business side. That's sort of like a constant that I am learning to just deal with. But it was just because I was constantly attention switching the entire week, right? So like Monday, it was all like me visiting studios, premises, trying to get understand why business rates are so much more expensive outside of London than inside of London, like all this kind of stuff. And then like Tuesday, I had to go to Birmingham. I was filming this thing with BBC News about budget, meal planning, charities that are going to be overstretched at Christmas. That should have provided a lot more context for me, and I really took that on board. But then you get dragged into that your other part of your mind, which is like comparison mode. So on Wednesday, I was chatting to a friend of mine. He's got a company in a similar space. They've just raised like 25 million, something like that. And like immediately you go into comparison mode. You're like, oh my God, like they're so much further ahead than me. Like, why can't I raise that much money? Why can't I have that many employees? And then like Thursday, Friday was just like battling fires all day long. And so at the end of the week, I was just like completely, I wouldn't say burnt out. I think I use that word a little bit too sort of loosely. And it was just a tough week. It was just a long week. And, I was working on Saturday and Sunday night as well. And so the business for me is just like a constant sort of spinning plates. I don't think I've spoken about it on the podcast recently. I lost my first employee. Did I mention that? I don't know if I mentioned that earlier.
I think you WhatsApped it to me, but we didn't.
We haven't talked about it. Yeah. So, dude, it was like a breakup. It was like a breakup. I felt like rejected. I felt like, what's wrong with me? Yeah, I can change. Is it me?
Man,
I could do better. I'll give you the context. She was a really good employee. I've been training up for like 6 months and stuff, just getting into the swing of things. And it was really good. Yeah, she super on it, like great can-do attitude. But she got like a really good opportunity, and it was like just an easy sort of yes for her and an easy yes for me if I care about one of the core values for my business, which is I want to give value to my employees as much as they give value to the business. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. And I think in this, if you really do give a shit about your employees, you allow them to flourish and you can support them and as much as they support you. So yeah, it was bittersweet because I was happy for her, but also like, oh man, I've got to find someone. I've got to interview like another 40 people. Like I literally interviewed personally like 40 plus people just to get to her. And then like, I've got to go through the whole process again. I've got to take on that work because like, we've got a very flat sort of organizational structure with no managerial positions right now. So everything kind of, the bottleneck goes to me. And I think it sort of compounded in the week that I had last week. But I was going to ask you, like, obviously you've hired like a whole bunch of people, and when you lose big hitters, as I'm sure you have, A, what are the emotions? Like, is it like a rejection the first time it happens? And B, like, how do you just get people up and running, especially in this environment where it's very hard to find the right talent?
The questions you've got to ask are, do you feel that the process that you guys have internally, is that the right one to ensure that folks like that will not come to situations and they leave? Like, so i.e., are you doing check-ins? So, the one-to-one check-ins, are you doing, are you giving them opportunity to grow? Because what always happens, always happens in businesses is that, there's three buckets of people. There's the low performers who managers spend so much time with the majority of the time. Then you've got the medium performers, and they keep an eye on those guys. And then you have the great performers where they're like, oh, don't worry, they're doing so good. They'll never leave. They're so happy because we're doing well. But so, it's the high performers and medium performers that get forgotten about. And the question is like, how much love and how much growth are they getting? Because we spend so much time on the low performers. So I'd say, I like to use these times to self-reflect. Obviously there's this emotional piece which we'll come to, but I use this as okay, what can I learn from it? I know it's just quite a cheesy thing, but I always say when someone leaves, okay, what can I learn from it? Because for me, that's what pumps me up. Rather than going through the grieving, I just go, okay, what can I learn from it straight away? Because that gets me in a positive state. And then I start thinking, okay, wow, this person's leaving now. And I start coming to the realization that this is happening. And I start just thinking, okay, I'm sad about it, so I have to go through the emotions. So I always one thing I've learned is that, feel the feelings and express it. So, tell them you're sad. I always do. I'm like, I'm really, really sad. Like, I'm really upset this is happening. One thing I've also learned is that if someone wants to leave, I generally don't try to keep them, because if they've fully checked out, like me convincing them to stay, it doesn't usually work that well. They normally stay, but it's like, you can get a portion of those people to stay, but it's usually on the back of their mind, they're going to be thinking, hey, I should have gone. It's a bit like a relationship. If someone says, hey, I want to leave.
Just like a relationship.
To stay.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
It's exactly like that. So, so in a weird way, I've had probably like 100 breakups. So yeah, I'm ready. It breaks me up. I'm pretty strong. Like, feel the feelings. The first one's really, really hard. And then, then naturally your mindset will be like mine, and it gets stronger. You're like, okay, well, it's happened. I've accepted it. But before I go through the emotions, what can I learn? Because that motivates me, because then I've got my lessons, and then I go into feel, release my I go through the grieving process. It's exactly like a grieving process, right? You're sad, you're upset, you then accept it, and then you're like, okay, let's make this better.
Yeah, that summarizes quite well, actually, the last couple of weeks.
So what stage are you at?
I think I'm definitely like past it now. I think I'm at
okay.
I think the second bit is like, what can I learn from it? And I definitely learnt that the type of person I want working in that role has to have certain values and certain aspirations. It doesn't necessarily mean that aspirations are a bad thing, but it just means, I just need to know the direction to travel. And I think that question, just coming back to the hard week I had last week, what can I learn from it? I actually sat myself down, was like, okay, what can I learn from this week? And it basically just, it's a lack of process. It's a lack of like saying no to certain things and prioritizing. And one thing that I have been doing, dude, that is an absolute game changer, is what you do, where you don't have any meetings prior to 12. And
I've been telling that for ages.
Yeah, I know you have. And I haven't been doing that. I'm like, I can't fit it in. I've been very rigid with myself, and it's sick. It is game changing. Like my cognitive energy is focused on things that require the energy in the morning, and I'm not being broken or attention switching by having meetings before 12. My assistant's been pretty good with that as well. So
one other good mindset shift is, and it's a really good one, and it's to always remind yourself that the business has to align with the employee as well, right? The business's purpose has to align with the employee's purpose.
Yeah, and also like the thing you said about like, not shying away from the sort of sadness or the grief or whatever, like as funny it is to frame it in those words, it's an opportunity to practice stoicism, because I think a lot of people think about stoicism as being emotionlessness, and it's not at all. It's the appreciation that emotions are going to happen regardless. Negative, positive emotions are absolutely inevitable. It's biologically hardwired. And we're not meant to like bury it. And I think that's like a common misconception. Instead, stoicism and the practice of stoicism is about ensuring that pain and grief isn't made worse by thinking about it or overthinking about it. And that, is exactly the reverse. Like, joy and pleasure isn't made more by like, again, focusing and obsessing on that. So I think like appreciating like, yeah, it's a shit thing that happens. It's going to happen. What can we learn from it? It's great. Yeah, like allow you some time to like, be sad about it, and then it's time to go on and like let's focus on other things. So that is like, an opportunity to practice stoicism. There's my little tangent.
What's really interesting right now is that I'm realizing that this is a really tough time for a lot of people because people have not hit their goals in business, right? If you're an entrepreneur or, if you've got a role which is, there's a lot, let's just say, you're getting stretched and pulled, you need support and help, right? So I think a lot of people in my friend circle probably look at me as the guy that can hopefully fix some of their problems. So I get so many messages on a Monday and I feel bad because I want to try to help them, but I'm noticing right now is the max it's ever been because it's such a tough time. Like the recession's here, people have not hit their goals, they're a bit upset, they're a bit sad. Their teams are obviously not made their bonuses or their goals, they're worried about their jobs. So all of that pressure is getting to folks, and there'll be some that will float through and there'll be some that come out strong. And those are the three camps. We'll see what happens. But you're probably seeing it from your friend circle. Are you feeling it as well? Are you seeing it?
So I'm definitely feeling it, but I'm also seeing it as well. Like we've got some mutual friends whose companies have closed, well-funded, very smart entrepreneurs, difficult environment, particularly in SaaS. That sort of industry is getting hit really hard. And I was actually listening to the All In podcast today with David Sachs. They call him like the secretary of SaaS.
I love them. I love those guys.
They are such jokers. I mean, it is interesting to listen to sometimes because they're just like a bunch of billionaires like playing billionaire games. But then they also do like a whole bunch of like random tangents and they take the piss out of each other quite a lot. And Jason Calacanis, like he is a smart guy when you hear him on his own podcast or other people's podcasts, but in that environment, they really pick on him and they make him sound like such a dumbass, but he's not. He's a really smart guy. But I don't know. Yeah, I think he needs to stand up for himself a little bit more. Maybe it's because he's like lower down the pecking order in terms of like monetary wealth.
Yeah, he's the poorest out of the group by far.
He's the poorest out of the group.
He's the poorest by far. By far. Well, he's probably worth 100 million and the others are worth the billions. So
exactly. This is a very interesting point, right? Because everyone has those different levels of wealth that they, aspire to be part of or are currently in. And if you're comparing yourself up always, you're always going to feel inadequate. And he comes across so inadequate compared to that collection of people. But in reality, he's a smart, savvy investor who is very clued up in the market.
But you also, like, if you're in that environment, maybe, it's easy for us to say it, but when you're then put in that environment, it's probably tricky as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I don't feel inadequate to my friends who are clearly richer than me or more monetarily wealthy, because I feel that there are other things that make one person wealthy. Do you know what I mean? It's not like you're always comparing. It's like top trumps. Like, I don't feel like I'm always playing a game of top trumps, and that I've had to beat out of myself, to be honest, because I think we all have it sort of ingrained into us, particularly coming from Asian culture. I don't know, like Indian culture. I'm not sure if you agree with this, but it's always like, what's your neighbor doing, or what's the other person in your community doing? As a benchmark for how you should be doing or how you feel you should be doing. So sometimes I feel that's sort of like ingrained in me, and I've had to sort of like move past that.
Yeah, I went through the same cycle as well. I remember Amit and me when we were in actually at your wedding, we chatted about this, and we gave this analogy. I don't know if this is the right time to drop it, but like everyone's like a pizza, right? And everyone's got their own ingredients. Like, you might have pepperoni, peppers, cheese, ham, whatever it is, but like everyone's got their own ingredients. And what one thing with pizza is they all taste good. Like, all pizzas are unique and different. There's different levels of toppings, but each one is great and tastes good in its own way. But we're not going to be the same, right? And some person may have more mushrooms, more cheese, more unique things. And I feel as long as you're aware of your ingredients and you make the best pizza possible with your ingredients, that's all you can do, right? And you can't compare to others. And the analogy goes further because like everyone wants to be like a pepperoni and jalapeno pizza, or like a veggie supreme, and like everyone's got their own. But I think it's better to just be your own unique pizza, and they're all cool. Like, all pizzas are nice. All right, have you got any other threads
on the subject of subscription as service businesses, tech businesses in general, just anything in the consumer space? It's a very interesting time because obviously people are churning from their subscriptions. People are trying to act more frugally as they should
save
do.
Money.
Save
Yeah,
money.
yeah.
We're going to save money. Same here. Like, we're always looking at ways to save because we want to invest in, our own house one day and all the rest of it. Anyway, I've actually been leaning into a lot of Alex Hormozy stuff. He was like an early gym bro who started like doing these gyms and creating like physical gyms, and then he leaned into the sort of consultancy space, basically scaled up his consultancy, and he's very good at teaching you how to maximize the value that you give to clients without necessarily having to dig into your pocket and like spend. And actually something called feature fallacy, which is actually quite common within apps, is, if I just create this new shiny new feature, that's going to it's going to be like rocket fuel for my subscriptions. And actually, you don't want to think about that. You want to think about how you can demonstrate most value to your consumer very early on. And the question you want to ask
100%.
yourself, the question you want to ask yourself in this environment is, how can I give 10x value for a tenth of the price that I'm actually paying for right now? And so this is a really good sort of thought. What's the word I'm looking for? It's a very good thought exercise.
Framework.
Framework for when, you don't actually have like a huge cash injection or like a huge amount of investment to play around with and like do all these tests. It's like, okay, how can we be as like scrappy to give as much value to our customers? So I've been diving in. I've been doing a lot more customer service. We're going to be doing a lot more like user interviews. We're going to find out like what people love about the Doctor's Kitchen app, what people hate about it, how we can offer more value by offering things off the app as well. So not necessarily building new features, which will cost tens of thousands of pounds. Maybe it's like, okay, we'll just get on Zoom like once a week, and then like you do like a live cooking session with Dr. Rupy, and we just do it via, a tool that costs me less than £100 a month. Just to add that extra value and like see what works, see what doesn't work, and see how we can allocate capital more efficiently. So that's something that I've just been really leaning into. And I think for any business owners, it is a really good question to ask yourself, how you can 10x your value to your customer without necessarily spending 10x more and actually spending less.
The hard thing is, and this is the big struggle, so I've invested in a lot of subscription businesses, right? I've done about, on full transparency, I've probably invested in like 40 different companies. A lot have been subscription businesses. And I personally feel most businesses should be quite defensive right now and figuring out the feature that works, that's been bringing in most of the money, and just make that feature 10x better. And I don't know, a good example is maybe on Calm, right? On that app, I knew from, the inside through just like friends who were there, that the sleeping meditations were going really well. And yes, they could have done more meditations in other areas, but they just thought, screw it, we're going to double down. And they started investing in a lot of celebrities, right? So hence you had Harry Styles, you had a few other celebs starting to do the sleeping side. So they just doubled down in an area which they knew was being used, and they could really get even more interest, more subscribers, and more people sharing. So I feel you've got to figure out there, what is that area which is in your app, if we're talking about you, like which is the bit that people are excited about, that if you magnified it 10x, it would give you 10x the value. I feel that's what you got to solve for. But trust me, it's really, really, really hard. So people just don't want to answer the question because they're like, I'm scared. It's like you're betting all your chips into one area.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, and we talked about it before, like for founders and even people top of the corporate ladder, like the reason why they, the most successful ones is they do pour the chips in something. They go all in. So
we are investing a lot more in like content on the app as well as off the app, because content is consistently what people have grown acclimatized to, and that's what we get all our feedback from. So we're doubling down on like recipe creation. We're like putting much more effort into the styling and stuff, rather than like building out like a meal planner that maybe only 10% of our subscribers will actually utilize. We're just going to go ham on the actual content side of things. And then also the studio that I've been banging on about for a little while, that's going to provide us the ability to do a lot more high quality video content.
Yeah. I'm excited. I think it's great. I think I've seen your content. We need you to post more high quality content, and it should be good. All right. So I've got one topic, right? Because it's that time of the year. We're coming close to it. It's all about goal setting, right? So I've been doing goal setting for probably like 15 years. It's mental. But ever since I went to Tony Robbins, this was what he taught me, right? And obviously I think Tony Robbins is great. At that time it was exactly what I needed, and he supported me a lot. And I think we talked about it. We both got inspired by him in our early 20s. We both discovered him in our own weird way. So here's a few of my tips. I've wrote a few notes down because I thought I want to try to make sure we get some good action takeaway from it. Okay, this is not one, but I just think the most important thing is to start early. I hate it when you're like, January 1st and you're trying to do your goals. Like, these goals were goals you want to do for your life, so you should have started them already. So, just start them now. Like, there's no real reason why you got to start in Jan, like with everyone else on the starting line. Why don't you start a few weeks early? I think this is the first one to start off with, right? Is that I find a lot of people setting goals right now are goals that deeply they don't want. It's more about impressing others. And I've noticed it's a very common thing. So even with me, I'm not going to lie to you, like at the start of this year, actually it was the start of last year, I said I was going to do a podcast, right? And I didn't do it. And I think we talked about it because I felt like deeply, I don't know, something in me I thought is more for my ego rather than me wanting to share. But I love communicating, right? So then I came to the realization, okay, I love communicating, and this is an easy way for me to share what I've learned to folks, and I wanted to give back in some form or way of past my learning. So I thought this was the best format for me. So then I came to the realization, actually, this goal is for me, not for society.
I like to simplify these things. Like you can set goals to flex, or you can set goals to be truly happy for yourself, right? And that the two, I think, are exclusive. I think, when I set myself goals like, I want a company that is generating 100 million revenue every single year, I have to ask myself the question, is that because I truly think that's going to make me happy or other people happy? Or do I want to put that on my sort of like credentials one day, on my like Twitter bio, or like, am I doing this to flex? And I think you have to be very honest with yourself. And I have to be very honest with myself about that as well. And on the subject of goals in general, most people, like you said, set them January 1st, probably a bit hungover, not really put that much thought into it. So starting early is very, very important. And also revisiting them every month. So I pretty much look at my goals every week because it's on my notes, and I just review them, and I'll change them in time as well,
So I love that one. Flex, or for you, or is it for you or for others? Whichever way you look at it. I love that. So that's number one. You talked about number 4 of mine, but we might as well go for that one. But yeah, sticking with the goals. So yeah, I read it every week. I go one step further, and I think I mentioned it on another episode, is that I'll write out what that goal is, and I will also feel the emotion of how I'm going to feel once I get that goal. So I'm essentially visualizing, like manifesting that goal. And I know exactly what it's going to feel like once I have it. So in my mind, I've already got it. And what that does, it suddenly creates this frequency within me to attract that goal. And that one's been really powerful. That's been like an upgrade to my framework, my system. So we've got sing in stillness, that will, like, to repeat, we've got sing in stillness to confirm you're doing these goals for yourself. We've got sticking with the goal, so doing it every week and having a method to go back. The third one I wanted to talk about is like clarity on the goals, because what I've learned, and this ties back to what I've just mentioned, but you got to be super, super, super clear with what you want. Otherwise, it just doesn't happen. So like a prime example is, someone wanting to set up a business, right? Let's use that simple example, and we can use another one after. But someone wants to set up their own business, they want to grow their business. If you're not clear about how much you want to grow it by, and how does it look, what does this business look like, the team you want to have, like if you're not absolutely clear about how that outcome's going to look, you're not going to achieve it because there's no clarity. So when that opportunity comes in front of you, or that situation, like, you're just confused. Another good example is in a relationship, right? So clarity on goals is critical. And in order to have good clarity on goals, you need to find someone who's had that goal, so they can get you in that right mindset. They can challenge you and go, hey, look, this is what it's going to look like, and spar with you, because then you can work out what that gap is, and that will help you achieve the goal. So yeah, what's your thoughts on the clarity?
On the subject of the clarity, 100% agree. Every day when I remember after meditating, I do an exercise, a visualization exercise. I've just pulled up I've written it down in a notes document, and I read it to myself every single day. So I say to myself, practice visualizing your team members, the studio, the test kitchen, the HQ, the team dog, the team coffee machine, the feeling, the smell, the location, the vibe, the ethos, the excitement, the company bank account, the flow of revenue into the company, how that adds value to your employees, the house you come back to, the stress-free Like I literally go through, pinpoint all those different things, and I try and play that movie in the back of my mind. And this is my current one right now, because I'm looking towards, the studio and growing the team. A really good exercise to get yourself into this sort of creative state is to imagine, let's say you are running a business, right? Imagine someone from, I don't know, TechCrunch or Wired magazine or Financial Times magazine comes to your office and writes an article about your company. So you're writing it from the perspective of the journalist, and you're literally like, I turn up at XYZ, and like, this is what the vibe was, and this is the person that greeted me. And like, so you're telling the story through a journalist who is basically in your world, in your future world, because it's bloody long.
Where'd you learn that idea? That's a great one.
I referred to Tara Swart a bunch of times on this podcast, that she wrote the source. We'll get her on the pod. She's amazing. Her book really did inspire me to do a lot of this kind of work, like just thinking about, ways in which you can crystallize that vision. Because I'll be honest, like for me, it was kind of hard to like exactly formulate who I need in my team. And what you said is right. Like finding someone who has done what you want to achieve is going back to that sort of like mimetic theory. It's like you can put the pieces of the puzzle together, and you can build your own sort of puzzle based on the building blocks of other people. And that's a really good tactic, to just seek out these people and almost like, adopt them as mentors and as people to sort of like, help you along your journey. So yeah, it's a good exercise.
And the last one, so number 4, is like prioritizing your goals. So what I find is a lot of us have got such a big list of goals and different, things you want to do. So for example, let's just go through a typical person. They're going to have goals on their career. Like they might want to make X amount of money, or they might want to be X level in the business, or they want to get a fundraise, whatever, whether you got your own company or not. You're going to have a ridiculously ambitious goal, which is great. Then you're going to have something about your relationship. Maybe you want to find someone, or you want to, be at the next stage, whether it's to get married or have kids, or wherever that stage is. You might have some stage you want to get into. You might have something around friendships, you'll have something around travel, you'll have something around fitness, you'll have something about me time. Like these are things that I guarantee should be on most lists, right? Now the hard question comes, like, which one is the priority? Because a lot of these areas, they are big projects. Like getting successful in your career, like that's a bulky project. I call them like, there's different levels of games. This is a big one. You've got big projects, medium projects, and small projects. In my mind, like actually keeping fit, that's a small one, because it's like an hour, a couple of hours a week. You can do that, right? It's not easy. It's quite easy. Like, but if you want to do building your own business and being successful, that's a big project. If you're about to go through a big phase in your relationship, like that is quite a big project. So I think what I've realized is you can only probably do like 1-2 big projects a year, like really well, and then maybe 1 or 2 little ones. And I feel a lot of people want to do lots of big ones. So, let's just say hypothetically, you're single and you want to find someone. Like you got to decide which one is priority. Do you want to find someone, or do you want to go up at work? Like, hit a big milestone at work, because doing both is ridiculously hard. I can tell you that. It's not, from speaking from friends, to people, like anyone, you can't nail both.
You also got to be aware of your natural tendency to choose the path of least resistance, right? So if you've got genuinely high priority goals that you want to achieve, but they're big and they're audacious and they're big hairy goals or whatever, and let's say you've got like 2 or 3 at the top of your list, and you've got some medium priority or low priority things on the lower list, but those are easier. Your brain is going to want to like, let me just like tick off a few of these and get some momentum. And sometimes that can work to get you like started, but you got to be really, and it happens to me on a daily basis, right? So I'll look at my to-do list right now. I've got two big things I need to do. One thing is like I've got to create like 5 budget meals for the BBC because they're on at me to put some stuff on their website. And then I've also got to do a YouTube review for the channel and stuff, and like basically restructure it and all the rest of it. But I've got like a whole bunch of low priority ones, and I was like, maybe I could just do that like quick email there, and I can just tick a few things off here, and like, you know, but at the end of the day, like I'll feel better because like, oh, tick 3 or 4 things off, but I haven't done the really important things, and those just get kicked down the road. So you don't want to do that with your goals for sure, because that can easily happen.
So in summary, you know, the 4 things are, you know, decide if this goal is for you or for others, or is it for, you know, as Rupy says, is it flex or is it like a genuine one? Number 2, like stick with your goals, like figure out how to do it. So, you know, look at it every week, make sure it's documented. Number 3 is be absolute clear. So have clarity of, you know, what you're trying to achieve. And number 4 is like, you know, you do need to prioritize because you can't hit all your goals. So make sure you really ensure the one that is of focus is your focus. And yeah, making sure that, you know, naturally you do spend time on it, as Rupy says. Cool. All right. I think we've covered a lot in this episode.
Hold on. You haven't told us any of your goals. You just told us at the start. Give us one.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would really like to probably spend more time on the podcast next year. I feel like I've been not giving it my full. I've given it some, but I think I can give it a lot more attention. So I feel getting more interesting guests and, you know, getting, you know, spending more time on that, because I feel we could get incredible guests that have reached out. I just haven't taken it forward. So I feel like that's something for me personally. Number 2 is, you know, right now I am dating and I feel it's time for me to find that right person and probably go into a relationship and take it seriously, because I feel like I put work ahead a lot. So I feel like I'm in that phase. And then number 3, I feel I could do a lot more to help other founders and give back. Obviously the podcast is one, but I feel I can do a lot more through my Bliss growth engine. So maybe invest in more companies in areas which are needed. So yeah, I feel like those are certain areas. And 4 is like probably expand my friend circle. I feel like we all stick with our own friend circles. I feel it's a good time to meet new people, make more effort there. I feel sometimes I'm not making as much effort. It's always interesting to get new minds, speak to new people, because you learn a lot and, you know, you get inspired, and they actually help you set your goals because you start learning, oh wow, this is possible.
I think that's great. I think the podcast is actually going to be an unlock for a lot of those things, like those 2, like A, giving back to founders, but B, meeting new people.
All right, cool. Amit, you free to jump on?
So in terms of, well, I'll try and keep it brief. So the feature fallacy bit that you talked about, how to get 10x value without doing 10x the work. So the concept people could look up there is leverage. So it's something that Naval talks about a lot, Naval Ravikant. And it's this idea that the human brain thinks just in terms of linear relationship. We think that the more that we do, the more we'll get out. But actually, there's a lot of exponential things. So yeah, just finding where those things are.
That's such a good point. That and leverage is such an interesting concept for early stage founders to really get their head around, because it's very easy to fall into the same trap of just inputs and outputs, and those being equivocal. And it's not that relationship at all. It's leverage is really important. That's a sick one.
Because the normal advice is hard work, but it's hard work over that. Part of the hard work is finding out where you have leverage. The goal setting thing I thought was amazing. And one of the things underlying it was realism. So I think sometimes when people are thinking about visualization and goal setting and Tony Robbins, they're thinking, oh, wow, I could do everything. I'm going to imagine I have $1 billion. I imagine I have the best girlfriend. I have like this dream life. But what you talked about was like prioritizing. So it's realistic goal setting and realistic visualization. And the second bit that connects to is that first topic you talked about with the pizza, where we talk about like thinking about the whole goal. So let's say, for example, you want to be an entrepreneur, but the realistic aspect of that goal is you're going to need to answer your emails at all times. You're going to spin many plates in the air, and probably like a lot of people superficially, like when we were talking about the comparing yourself topic, they think of Elon Musk and thinking, oh, I want to be that guy. But I would not want his life, man.
No way.
He is going through a lot and he lives his life under a microscope. So like when you think about your goals, don't just think about like, let's say you want to get a dog. Don't just think, okay, I'll have a dog and it'll be amazing. Think about all the hard stuff that involves like early mornings walks and things like that.
Amit, that summary is sick. Oh, you're not done yet? Wow, I'm already blown away.
No.
Yeah, one more bit.
It's getting really succinct this week.
So the last one was business breakups, and we sort of had like Jay as the old dog who's been through a million breakups, and he's like, "Don't worry, Rupy, this is your first time.
Come here.
So interesting. Like there was those two aspects of like one going through the emotions and then also learning from it. And yeah, you need both. And probably the place where I would say most people struggle. And this is one of the things like I picked up from learning with Jay. Like when he gives this advice, he's just like, yeah, go through the emotions and then learn from it. But his emotional intelligence is like, yeah, it's on a different level. And I imagine it's just because you've been through it so many times. And something else you mentioned, like sitting with yourself in stillness, really understanding what you want. And then, and then you can grow from it. I would relate that to the comparing yourself topic because like, okay, someone could want that level of emotional intelligence, but you got to go through 100 breakups, and that's really painful. So do you really want it? So
yeah, that's a very good point. Amit, we usually don't rate you and your summary, but I'm going to give that solid 8.5, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was
nice.
That was
great.
great.
Thanks, man.
That was very good.
All right, we'll leave you on a high today,
Yep.
Amit. But yeah,
We'll leave you on
great
a
episode. We'll leave you on a high. It's a great episode, guys. Enjoyed that one.